Wow! 2021. What an amazing, fantastic year where everything is fine and nothing is wrong. I keep forgetting what year it is. That's how good 2021 has been so far. And so, in the spirit of everything being normal and fine, let's kick off our brand new spanking year of reviews with a hot review for a bunch of games from Buttonshy. You might have heard of them. They're the ones that do dinky, adorable little wallet games. In a similar vein to Oink Games, Buttonshy make games that come in small packages with low price points. But Buttonshy take it all a step further. The games are so small that they fit in your wallet. They've often only got around 18 cards, cost $12 to buy or $3 if you print and play, and are hand assembled. You can also have them as part of a nifty Game a Month club. So we asked Buttonshy for a smorgasbord of their 10 finest games for us to put together a review. And imagine my disappointment when they came in this. Their so-called wallet games came in a bloody satchel bag. A bag that is bigger than a wallet. It's the size of a little kitten. And so, with that utter disappointment firmly out the bag, let's get started on our first review of this video, starting with the chunkiest game of the bunch. Oh my god! Sprawlopolis! Sprawlopolis is a game about building a lovely little city together. At the start of the game, you will draw just 3 cards from this slim deck of 18, and these will be your building objectives for that game. Perhaps this game you want to make a superhighway, tourist traps, or the suburbs. The starting player then takes a hand of 3 cards and deals 1 out to everyone else, and then the game begins. And all you do on your turn is place a card into your city, pass 2 cards to the next player, and then take another one to form your new hand. At the end of the game, you'll score points based on the biggest zone of each colour you have, and then for each of those objectives you meet. You'll then lose points for each individual road you have in your city, incentivising you to tie everything up into a nice petroleum bow. So you're trying to cooperatively use these cards, which are always slightly wrong, to build a city that does a little bit of everything with a few compromises along the way. Once you have placed your last card, you can add up all of your points and compare it to the little numbers at the top here, adding them all together, and that's the target score you're going for that game. Did you exceed it? Then congratulations! You have won your first game of Sprawlopolis. Did you not meet that number? You lose. And so that concludes our talk about Sprawlopolis, a fantastic little city builder game that I have enjoyed every single time I've played it. Ah, what a joy. If only there was more of the... Agropolis! That's right, folks, you heard it here first. Someone left Sprawlopolis alone in a jar, and it mutated into its very own standalone sequel. What does it add to the original? Animals. Agropolis takes Sprawlopolis to the countryside, and little has changed aside from some creative new scoring criteria. Are you in charge of building an big orchard? What about encircling some chickens, or maybe whatever this is? Some of the new objectives play with the fact that you've got 3 kinds of livestock on these cards, and they come in single or double pens, pressing all kinds of new wrinkles into how you set up your tiles to score, and all this is complicated by the feed fee, meaning that you'll need extra points to win based on how many matching symbols you have at the bottom of these cards. So combining the new lick of paint and fancy new scoring criteria, Agropolis is very much a iterative sequel. It's non-essential if you have the original, but it's a perfectly good place to start off because, gosh, the system is just so good and there's new wrinkles into it if you're a fan of that kind of thing. Great! I only wish there was just a way to combine the two. Oh my god. Combopolis. Something that is lovely about Sprawlopolis is how a raft of expansion materials turns this game into something that rivals the complexity of a classic Euro game in under 50 cards. The first of these is the Combopolis expansion, which combines Agropolis and Sprawlopolis into Combopolis, where you juggle the needs of rural and urban centres with just these few cards sandwiching the difference between the two and a raft of new objectives to shake things up a bit. This is a really neat little thing if you need even more Opolis, but often I find the most rewarding additions to your Sprawlopolis experience come in its many miniature expansions instead. And what exciting expansions they are! Construction sites need to be built upon with specific criteria for exactly how you do that. Points of interest provide a point-heavy hub for the very centre of your city. Wreckator is a disaster card that puts a giant lizard-shaped bomb in the middle of your town. Beaches provide permanent barriers to the sides of your city to limit its growth, but also to give possible points. And lastly, the interstate expansion lets you play Sprawlopolis as a competitive duel across a big, chunky road. Whew! That is a lot of expansions. And the thing is, they're all just good because the core of Sprawlopolis is so simple and so solid. Perhaps the most telling thing about this game is that during the process of playing all of the wallet games for this video, I'd often just go, ooh, I'll have a little cheeky game of Sprawlopolis to start me off. And then, you know, an hour would have passed, I'd have played 4 games of Sprawlopolis and had a great time doing it. It's just guaranteed good. I don't know if it can be topped. Or maybe it can. In Vino Morte, which roughly translates to In Wine We Trust, is maybe also one of the best wallet games in this list, but for entirely different reasons. This might be the perfect game to slip into your wallet if you're going to the pub with a medium-sized group of people that want something juicy, immediate, and easy to drink to. The teach here is silky smooth. Dealer deals face down. They must deal at least 1 wine and 1 poison. Players swap their cards or drink on their turn. No looking at any of the cards. At the end of the round, everyone drinks. Poison kills, wine survives. The dealer changes and the last player standing wins. Many have said that Skull is the perfect bluffing game because it is the simplest bluffing game. And In Vino Morte takes those grapes of bluffing and pulverizes them into something even sweeter. This game is an utter delight. Shut Up and Sit Down spent an episode of Card Games That Don't Suck talking about a game called Egyptian Rat Screw, a game which is basically just glorified Snap but has quickly become one of my absolute favourite pub games. We've also talked a lot on the podcast about games like The Mind, games with almost no mechanics at all that still manage to be absolutely scintillating when put in front of a group of good people. These are games that are incredibly airy when it comes down to it, but there is a magic in that air that propels them into being something completely different. When the decision is death or wine, the mental acrobatics and hysterics that come out of it are absolutely wonderful to behold. And all that air in the design is so welcome because In Vino Morte is so short, breezy, and watchable that drinking yourself to death in the first round is never a problem. There's little to no chance for sour grapes in something this short and simple. You know, speaking of sour grapes, this all reminds me of one of the first concerts I ever went to. A concert that I decided would also be the event in which I graduated to the adult world of alcohol to try and impress the person I was there with. And of course I decided that what I would do was take a plastic bottle and decant a full bottle of red wine into it in my parents' garage, and then bring that plastic bottle with me to the concert. At the time, I wasn't aware of the policy that venues had on bringing wine into the premises in an unmarked plastic bottle. The lady at the door told me I could not bring the wine with me into the venue, so I drank it then and there. The taste of the wine was nasty. It was overwhelming, pungent, and acrid. I drank on. I had to look cool, and I drank it all despite the, frankly, caustic flavour palette. An older me would reflect on this wine experience and understand that that wine was in fact rancid. It had been opened and it did taste absolutely disgusting, but at the time I just thought that was what wine tasted like. Bad. Of course, what I didn't anticipate was what happened afterwards. Halfway through the support act, my body began to rebel. The mounting pressure, teenage nerves, the jumping around, it all came to a fore in this sarcophagus juice-esque bile that was forming in the pit of my stomach. I spent the rest of the evening hunched over the toilets at the O2 Brixton, spewing bright red bile into the bowl, creating a sort of vinaigrette punch that would be served at the school disco from hell. The Black Plague has overcrowded the graveyard! Hooray! You're the assistant to Mr. Bones the Grave Tender, and you've got to rearrange everyone's dead skulls into a nice little pattern so that everyone's happy when they're gone. And just like that, you have captured me with this theme. Rearranging skulls in a crypt is engaging, macabre, and tracks seamlessly with the way that points are scored at the end of the game, which we shall go over first. Why not, you know? Structure's a myth. Peasants are just happy to be there. They'll get 1 point each so long as their bones are on display. Royals are also just happy to be there, but they're likely a little happier if they're on top. They score for every peasant, and in a lovely thematic twist, every other royal that's below them. Romantics want to be buried together. They'll score a juicy 6 points if buried next to one another, which is sweet. And priests want to be spread evenly throughout the stack, giving you a point for each unique level they appear on. Lastly, convicts want to atone for their sins and will score lovely heaven points if placed next to priests. What you've got here is a lovely web of interactions that immediately makes sense. But what's important here is that it makes sense, but it's maybe hard to achieve because your turns in Skulls of Sedlec are just a little bit twisty. You can either pluck a card from what is already available or flip over the top cards of 2 piles in the hopes of getting something good, but having to pick one of the cards that's revealed. Stacking cards into your pyramid takes an entire turn, and you can only stack if you have 2 cards supporting the one below it. And that is combined with the fact that you have an incredibly restricted hand of just 2 cards, so getting everything to fall snugly into place exactly how you want it is going to take some cool plays. And also compromises. And just like Sprawlopolis, it's got a trio of lovely little expansions. Monstrance adds a solo mode with weirdly specific shapes to make out of your skulls like a board game serial killer. Executioners adds chains of criminals to be chopped for extra points, and Royal Guards adds these bumpy blue boys who want to be above your lofty royals to best protect them. The raft of expansion materials and lovely, simple and juicy decisions means that Skulls of Sedlec is, in my book, a simple winner. It's another one of those games I would love to slip into my wallet and take to the pub for a more chill evening of shuffling cards and being nice to each other and also a little bit mean sometimes. And for what it's worth, my family really enjoyed this one. So Skulls of Sedlec, simple winner, juicy and nice and good. Whew! That is a lot of positivity for 1 and 2 and 3 of these games. How about we talk about a couple of duds? Heirarchy seems like a smart game hamstrung by its presentation. Essentially, each game you will get dealt a hand of 7 cards and then lay those cards out in a hand in front of you. The cards are labelled 1 to 13, and on your turn you take a card and place it into the line in the centre, with the restriction that you must play a card that's higher than whatever came before it. And then, if you cannot place a card on your turn, you lose the game and your opponent wins. The problem is, of course, that each of these characters has a specific ability or restriction. For example, the leper prevents cards marked with the royalty symbol to be placed next, or the knight, a card labelled 6, can be played on top of the dragon, a card labelled 9. What this boils down to is you sitting across from your opponent and trying to math out the exact path that is going to be taken between these cards that will get you to snooker them in the final stretches. And it's alright. I think that what I find most frustrating about Heirarchy is that all of the abilities of the cards are relegated to this tiny space up here. The numbers are, of course, important to work out what goes where, but when each ability fundamentally breaks the way that the game works, having it up here and not visible upside down just isn't good enough. And of course, this little quick reference has a list of all the abilities, but then you're trying to read the number and name of the cards upside down as well. I'm not sold. I'm not sold. Avignon, a Clash of Popes, is another of the 2-player games in this list, making it contractually part of Chess Month, the month that just keeps on giving. And just like chess, Avignon is, well, alright. In this tiny little tug-of-war game, you are trying to tug your way to popedom by moving these little characters across to different sides of the board and eventually absorbing them into your congregation like a Voltron made of religion. Pope fact. The first pope was actually 3 men, all called Ken. On your turn, you can pull a card towards you, push a card away from you, or petition a card using its unique ability. The Cardinal, for example, lets you pull everything towards you, but it costs 2 actions. If you ever manage the Herculean feat of dragging a card over to your side, then they become part of your congregation, and 3 of those cards in your little court wins you the game, unless you have a noble in the mix, and that's where things get confusing. The noble means you will win the game if you have a noble and your opponent has a knight, but it means your rival wins the game if you have a peasant and a noble. Pope fact. The Pope hates it when you harbour the poor, which is a set of conditions so core to the game, but also something you need reminding of every turn. The last action is to pick up something from the main play area, put it in the discard pile, and swap it out with something new, and that meant that a couple of my games ended in a really bizarre way, where my opponent just swapped out the last card. It happened to be a noble, they pulled it across the line, happened to have a peasant, and won. And that feels super unsatisfying, and what also feels unsatisfying is the other way you win the game, which typically is just some ambient pushing and pulling until someone manages to get enough things over the line and take the crown. Maybe a better way of putting it is it's a game of pushing popes like peas round your plate. I don't think I ever had a moment in this game where I went, ooh, that's a good move. I sort of went, yeah, that's fine. And then people made fine moves until the game was over. And that, to me, is Avignon, a Clash of Popes. It's good, but it's no Caravaggio. Pope fact. That wasn't a very good joke. Tussie Mussie, which is English slang for and then regretting it afterwards, is all about exchanging flowers that have secret messages. A turn in Tussie Mussie involves taking 2 cards as your offer, sliding them across the table to your opponent. They will choose which one they want to take, and you will choose which one you want to take, and both of you will add them into your little bouquet in front of you. Each of these cards has a unique value and a special ability, so to win hands in Tussie Mussie, you want a bunch of cards that combo together neatly to maximise your point potential. You play until both players have 4 cards in front of them, and then score. Whoever has the most total points after 3 rounds will win the game. The big wrinkle here is that when you play these cards as an offer, you play 1 face up and 1 face down. It's I cut you choose, but with only half of the choose visible at any given time. And this is a lovely little wrinkle to this game. It means that all the time you're second guessing what your opponent has in their bouquet and trying to work out which one you should offer which way up, and also trying to manage how much of your own bouquet you're keeping secret from your opponent to get those juicy points. And much like designer Elizabeth Hargrave's other kind of well-known design Wingspan, this game does try and suck you into its theme quite nicely. The rulebook encourages you to sprinkle the smattering of flavor text from your cards into every interaction in the game. Ho ho, you have deceived me, or you have been cruel. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so that is Tussie Mussie, one of the better wallet games if you're after something light and breezy and you like the theme. And you know what? I am going to say it again. This would be one of those perfect games to slip into your wallet and take to the pub with
Okay, so about here in the edit, I realised that I'd said, why not take this game one day to the pub way too many times? So I thought I would fix that by creating a virtual environment in which I could simulate being in the pub with Matt. I used a combination of Tabletop Simulator, Discord voice and video so I could see Matt's face, and the video game Sea of Thieves, where we could be inside of an actual tavern. I provided snacks and drinks in TTS, and I provided beverages in Sea of Thieves, and I think it went really well. So what we've got here, we've got the real pub in Tabletop Simulator, and then also in Sea of Thieves, I'm here with Mr. Jam Sponge Gold Swabby, looking just like he does in real life, having a delicious beverage.
Just like it's like the old time.
Do you think this is how we should always play games? This is how we should always play board games online together?
I don't think I'm going to drink real grog ever again. I'm just going to drink digital grog.
You could enjoy a delicious Kozel or a Brannick.
Oh.
Matt, what do you think of Circle the Wagons?
Yes.
Oh, wait, hold on. I need to put a title slide in.
Yeah, it's alright.
Circle the Wagons is in many ways the predecessor to Sprawlopolis, coming from the same designers and featuring the same building your city block by block core. Cards overlap into a little tapestry of contiguous squares to score some criteria. However, Circle the Wagons is a strictly two-player competitive number, with cards being distributed through a simple, central rondel of options. This little thing is rather clever, and it looks a lot clearer when you're not filming on top of your sock drawer. Let's say you want this lovely little gun card, because the scoring criteria insists you must have a bunch of guns in your town at the end of the game. You can pick it even though it's a couple spaces away. Sure, fill those cowboy boots, but your opponent gets every card in between, adding them to their own town at their own leisure. And this rondel system can be used offensively as well. Some cards will mean that you deduct points for having certain things in your town, so making your opponent pick one of those up is an absolute delight, but often cut with the regret that you also gave them a load of other great cards in the process. Circle the Wagons is a neat little game. I would easily play it above a couple of other games on this list, but I do think that Sprawlopolis is the better, more iterated upon design with better expansions. And that is...
Stop.
Oh, okay.
This is the board
game police?
Yeah, how did you know?
We've done this joke before.
Oh, I mean...
I'm editing out the lines as you speak.
No, I mean...
Yeah, see, whatever you just said there, it's gone. It's not interesting. Just get onto the thing... Get onto the thing that you care about, that you're here for, and then we can move on. The geography of the shot doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even...
No, it does. It works. No,
look, I can move the camera.
It does look. I'm here. I'm right here.
And you're not even there.
People don't know that.
Just do the bit.
Sure.
Hey, you. Does Circle the Wagons sound like a good game, but you want something better that we wanted to cover earlier, but we didn't cover? Glasgow. It's a two-player game from Lookout. It says on the bottom of the box. It's from Lookout Games. It's really good. It's really good. It's very Glasgow. It's a two-player game from Lookout Games. It says so on the box. It's got a mean rondel in the middle, and you build a city together. That city. It's Glasgow. It says so on the box. And you place things, and it gets you points. There's lots of little bells and whistles, like the way that some tiles score you points if they're on corners, and some score you points if you've got a complete set. But your opponent might stop you trying to do that. And it's really portable because it's got no cards, or cardboard, or wood, and you can take it anywhere, and you can play it anywhere, and it's easy to set up, and you can teach it to anyone. You can teach it to anyone. You done? Yeah? Okay. Circle the Wagons, a lovely little thinky game that maybe Sprawlopolis is a bit better than, and maybe Glasgow is also a bit better than if you want something larger. Still, if you want to print and play, it's a perfectly good way to pass the time. Antinomy is a game all about time, going forwards through it, going backwards through it, but curiously, never going upwards through it. Your goal in Antinomy is to create paradoxes with 3 cards of the same kind, symbol, number, or colour. And each paradox is worth 1 point, with 5 points to win. But it's the way you form these little triplets that's intriguing. Essentially, you'll move your little staff along this line of cards, playing a card for its number to move that many spaces forwards in time, and its symbol or colour to move backwards to a corresponding symbol or colour in time. Whatever you land on, you pick up and replace with the card you used to move there. When you have made a trio of cards that are all the same, these aren't the same, then you swap the ones to the left or right with the cards you used to make the paradox, I think it's called, taking the ones that are to the left or right of you, replacing them with those, and gaining a point. This is a fascinating puzzle in and of itself, but it's complicated by the fact that if your opponent ever lands on the same space as you, you will both compare the strength of your hands, adding up all the numbers on the card and comparing who has the highest. And whoever has the highest will steal a point from their opponent. A time point made of time? Look, I'll level with you. It is definitely hard to make antimony sound any less sexless than it already is. But I will also tell you that antimony is an interesting little abstract number. And I think that's because the puzzle is so easy to read and interface with that you can engage with the puzzle every single time you play and you don't get lost in a swamp of deduction, numbers and bluffing. But there are enough little hidden elements to the game that make it always a little bit spicy and exciting. This is the kind of abstract I am here for, because it's not about reading little bits of text or confusing iconography. The game makes itself as clear as it can so that the puzzle is as easy to interface with as possible. So if you're in the market for a little dinky tiny 2-player abstract, then I would recommend Antinomy. The only drawback, I would say, is that it needs 10 little standalone pieces to use as points, which doesn't sound like a problem, but it might be if you're in a hurry and just want to get the game to the table and you're playing it somewhere where you don't have 10 of the same thing available at any given time. I use 10 standard reference pairlets, and heaven knows those are tricky to transport without getting them all mucky with pocket fluff. Liberation offers a very simple pitch. What if Star Wars Rebellion, but very, very small? This is a minuscule deduction game where each player takes the role of one of two asymmetric factions trying their best to outsmart the other in a tug-of-war of information. The bad player is playing locations from their hand, forming a network of spaces that they can launch into attack from and adding new abilities to their suite. If they manage to find the location of the good guys' secret base, then they will win the game instantly. Meanwhile, the Liberation player has to launch sneak attacks, sabotage plans laid by their opponent, and shift their base around the map as best as possible to avoid their demise. If they can time the game out, cycling the deck 3 times, then they will win instead. Here's the thing, you might think that 3 cycles of this deck sounds like a lot, but it really isn't when you can count the number of cards in the game on your hand if you had 4 extra fingers. And on top of that, 3 cards start in the hand of each player, and 1 starts in the discard. So that's a really slim deck of cards to start from, and add to that the goods player gets to draw a card every single turn, and the bad player gets to choose, which is an agonizing decision. It's more information, but less time to put that information to use. And Liberation really does use that slim deck to its utter advantage. Each location can be neatly mnemonicked with but a letter and a colour, so remembering what you've seen, what's in play, and what is yet to be unearthed is incredibly streamlined. And for the good player, seeing your opponent lay out a visual web of places that they can attack from makes choosing where to spring from next a delight. Is your base here? Is it here? Like a drunk EDM fan, you will be searching for base until the sun rises, but only if you play about 5 billion games of Liberation. Thing is, you can play a game of this and then swap sides and then play again in 1/12 of the time it takes to play an entire game of Star Wars Rebellion. So, my advice, this is a weird little curio. Take it on, have a little go, have a bit of fun. You can print and play it for about 1/billionth of the cost of Star Wars Rebellion. It's a neat little curio, and I like it. That's Liberation. Moving on. Okay, so let's finish off this video with one last game. It is the only dedicated solo game on this list, and it might be my favourite of the bunch. This is Food Chain Island, and it is an absolutely wonderful game for someone who wants to sit around, deal out some cards, shuffle them around a bit, and just get a bit chilled out while doing it. Each game of Food Chain Island involves you dealing out the entire deck of animals into a 4x4 grid in front of you, with the goal of condensing them down into 3 or fewer stacks of creatures. On any given turn, a creature must eat another, sliding their card over the top of something orthogonally adjacent to them, and then following through with any of their activation effects. Thing is, each animal can only eat something that's between 1 and 3 sizes smaller than it. So this fox can eat this snake, but can't eat this mouse. It's a food chain, it's how it works. And very quickly, you can realise that you've shifted power around your grid in a very strange way that gets you into a bit of an edible bind. Most of the time, you've got a perfect plan sussed out, but very quickly your grid gets all wonky and soon animals are too far away from each other to have a snack. You'll realise that you've made a horrible ecosystem where not a single creature is left to lick this ant. There's also some helpful sea creatures that have one-time abilities that will help you get out of a pickle, and there's also these horrible birds that will mess up your strategy. You can add them in if you want. But generally speaking, Food Chain Island is just a simple little joy. It's a lovely solo puzzle where you slide cards over the top of other cards, trying to get them into piles and have a nice time for 10 minutes, and then it's over. And when it's over, because of the nature of stacking all these things into nice little piles, it's already packed away. So it's lovely. Food Chain Island, a lovely solo game. But why is it my favourite? It's because of this alligator. Look at his face. That's too much pleasure. What's wrong with you, alligator? What kind of sixth sensual enjoyment are you getting out of this experience? I feel disgusting just looking at you. It is not the alligator, because he is a pervert. I think the reason it is this is because it's the only solo game on this list. And every single time I've tested one of these games, I've felt a distinct sense of melancholy for the people who I'm missing this year, and how I wish I could be playing these games round a table with them. Most of my testing for these games has either been with some family who don't really play board games very much, or with people online in a weird sanitized environment that doesn't suit these games very well at all. Ava had a great point on the Shut Up and Sit Down Game of the Year podcast when talking about subjectivity, which I will awkwardly put in here.
This is all subjectivity, yeah? Everything is subjectivity. And everyone's subjectivity is, like, under huge assault from this, like, global, ridiculous thing. So, like, it's okay. I want to just set expectations that, like, I think these answers are going to be really, really bizarre because they've been made in a really bizarre year. And that reflects the time that we've been in rather than the reality of what is Endgame.
During this review, I felt that more than any other project I've been involved with on this site so far. Everyone's subjectivity feels so under fire that I can't tell if these games are half as good or half as bad as I think they are. I am missing that human component of games these days, and that's why it's all a bit weird. Okay, doom and gloom over. That is me done. 10 wallet games in, I'm going to assume, like, 17 minutes? You know, I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression. Whilst that last part of the video was a little bit melancholy, I do want to stress that it's been one of my favourite videos to research, write, and edit.
I said that while filming. It definitely wasn't my favourite to edit.
Because these games are so easy to pop open and just play. They have the same energy as opening a pack of trading cards, but instead of 10 useless bits of paper, you get 18. Instead, when you pop them open, you get a full, exciting game with unique art, unique rules, and unique mechanics every time. There's only 2 of these that I thought weren't that good, and even those games were pretty alright. And that's the thing that I love about these games in general, is that I can't wait to get excited about more of them, to play more games in this little wallet game world and share these nice little bundles of design with people like myself in person, please. Please, in person, soon. Okay, that is the end of this week's installment of the Shut Up and Sit Down YouTube show. We have got an exciting year ahead because we're committing to a thrice weekly upload plan. So you can look forward to a new stream, a new video, and a new podcast every single week. You can check those out here if they appear, and you can also check out all of the other cool videos here. They won't appear here, they never do. And that is the end of the video. Have yourself a lovely day. Bye.